The invention of the bottle and cork is a fairly recent one.
The traditional closure for a bottle of wine is a cork, and that is used to close the bottle. It allows oxygen to get in and out. There are different corks, and they cost more or less depending on the quality of the cork. There are cork producers and longer corks, smaller corks, higher quality, and the rate of wines that are affected by TCA reduce if you have a higher quality cork. Some corks can be affected by something called TCA, trichloroanisole, and that will cause a taint in the cork.
So cork taint comes from corks, and cork comes from cork trees. And so it's a living organism, so they have to treat that to make sure that it's clean before they stick it in the bottle of wine. And the bottle of wine is basically a blank canvas for other aromas. And so as soon as you close a wine with a cork that may be faulty, it starts to take on those aromas.
The smell of TCA is smell of a dirty thing, of let's say the flavor you can feel in a dirty cellar.
And it tends to give off a musty or wet newspaper sort of aroma.
That damp basement smell.
A bad smell. A bad smell that completely changes the wine and makes it undrinkable.
As you're tasting a wine and you're exposing it to oxygen, the corkiness of the wine actually increases over time. So sometimes you may taste a wine and say, wow, is this corked? I'm not sure. Give it a couple moments and you'll really see that start to blow up.
And you're so much more hurt if that bottle's corked or off because you waited 17 years and the wine's bad.
Those that are very traditional, they want to stay with cork. There's a romance of it. Not too romantic to, pull out the bottle opener and pop it like you're popping a beer at the table for a crown cap, but that's where the tradition lies. And you'll see a lot of established wineries, especially in France and in Italy, sticking with cork closures.
All our bottles of Montevertine are sealed with corks because we need a sealing that let the wine breathe during his life in the bottle. And the cork gives you that little micro oxygenations that helps the wine age and change during the year.
Then you would have composite corks that came on the market where it's particles of cork that are pushed together.
Well, the synthetic cork closures are often used as an alternative to traditional cork. They are a little bit less expensive, but also it decreases the chances of you getting the TCA in the wine. So they're often used for maybe rosés or less expensive wines.
Naturally, if I would produce a white wine for an easy drinking, a fast drinking, I would never use a cork because a cork can give you problems because it's not a perfect sealing.
The other widely used enclosure for wine would be the screw top, also called the Stelvin closure.
For most people, they see a screw cap and they think it's a cheap wine. But as people start to understand that wines under cork closure can have flaws, that they can have a lot of variability from bottle to bottle, they've started to experiment with screw caps. And while it may look cheaper or not as fancy, in actuality, it provides a cleaner and more secure closure for wine.
There was a period of time when they were made where no oxygen could get in and out. Now they have a little seal inside of the screw top which allows oxygen to get in. So more and more you can let a wine breathe and let it evolve as it's meant to with the Stelvin closure.
They're viewing that their wines are meant to be consumed young, and as a result, they don't need that extensive time under closure and the exchange between oxygen and the wine to help it develop. So it's a great way for them to produce a wine that they know is going to be fresh, they know it's going to be clean, and they know it's going to be consumed pretty quickly.
So almost all of New Zealand and Australia are using almost entirely Stelvin closures.
Think about the type of wines that they're producing there. They're wines that are consumed much more youthful, that they want that freshness, and just a little bit of TCA can really taint those wines pretty dramatically. So if you're thinking of Australian Rieslings, a Sauvignon Blanc from New Zealand, those are wines that I think really helped introduce screw caps to people in other parts of the world.
There's a significant amount of evidence that the screw cap does age incredibly well and oftentimes, if not better than the cork, but there's not enough historical evidence. There's not enough, okay, this wine has been here under screw cap for 70 years or 50 years or 30 years.
I did this really great tasting with Chateau Margaux and their second label, Pavillon Rouge, and they did a series of tastings with cork closure versus Stelvin closure. and found that the Stelvin closures, they make the wine age a little bit quicker versus the cork, which helps the wine age slower.
Some wineries like to provide a service where they'll go and help recork bottles of wine, where they will actually take out an older cork, taste the wine to make it sound, and then they will top it up with a wine of the same vintage and reseal it. Purists say that that's not the same wine that was put in initially, and it takes away a lot of the natural evolution of wine, so they'll steer away from that.
I'm a huge proponent of drinking aged wine. So just personally for me, I prefer the cork. It could be entirely simply because I just like it.
I think I'm a traditional lover of wine and wine service and the art of wine, and I really prefer the cork for just the enjoyment and the love and the poetry of the performance.
For me, I love screw caps because you take them to the movie theater, you don't have to have a corkscrew, pop it off, pour, and you're good to go.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with a wine that's meant to be consumed pretty early, under screw cap or anything else. I think once about 3 years behind the vintage, I kind of would hope to see a cork.
However, I do think that if you're in a restaurant and you're not checking or tasting every bottle of wine, and a guest gets a bottle that has TCA taint, that's a really big problem. So I love that there are wines out there that you can just crack the cap and serve without having to think about TCA.